The fresco you're looking at is the ideological center of a narrative cycle decorating the chapel of St Sylvester, part of the complex of the Basilica of the Four Crowned Saints in Rome, just next to the Basilica of St. John Lateran and the Lateran Palace, where medieval popes had their seat. It's also just a couple of blocks away from the Notre Dame Roman Global Gateway. The cycle recounts the life of the titular saint Sylvester in 11 scenes. The frescoes were done in the 1240s at a time when the conflict between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire was reaching one of its peaks. These frescoes represent the political point of view of the papacy, which Dante vehemently opposes throughout the comedy and his other works. The fresco illustrates the so-called donation of Constantine, the act by which Emperor Constantine had allegedly transferred the temporal power over the city of Rome and the Western Roman Empire to Pope Sylvester before establishing his new capital in Constantinople after the Pope had healed him from leprosy through baptism. The humanist Lorenzo Valla eventually proved the document of the donation a forgery in 1440. Doubts about its authenticity had been raised for centuries, though. In any event, in this scene, Emperor Constantine is kneeling down in front of an enthroned Pope Sylvester, whose right hand is raised in benediction. Constantine offers the Pope, as in a feudal act of homage, the symbols of temporal power, the papal tiara, the umbrella, and the white horse that the Emperor is conducting by the reins, acting in the role of a groom. Both Constantine and Sylvester have their hands on the tiara. This fresco is a snapshot of the transfer of power from the Emperor to the Pope, and therefore from the Empire to the Catholic Church. The conflict between the Holy Roman Empire and the Church had been particularly harsh already towards the end of the 11th century, when Pope Gregory VII had reformed the Church and arrogated to the Pope, and solely to the Pope, the powers to elect, move, and depose bishops and abbots, and even the power to depose emperors, affirming the superiority of the spiritual power of the Pope over the temporal power of the Emperor. Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV had challenged the Pope, particularly regarding the investiture of bishops and abbots. To leave the control of that to the Pope meant giving up control of vast territories and their resources and the economy rotating around monasteries and bishoprics. A bit over a century later, Pope Innocent III had been very careful as guardian of the minor King of Sicily, Frederick II, who was later crowned Holy Roman Emperor on November 22nd, 1220 by Innocent's successor, Honorius III. From the point of view of the Church, this meant that the power of the Emperor had to be fully legitimized by the Pope through the coronation ceremony in St. Peter's. And yet the conflict between the Empire and the Church was still ongoing. Italian cities took sides with either the Emperor, the Ghibellines, or the Pope, the Guelphs. Italian Guelph cities had revived the Lega Lombarda, a league of northern cities that harshly opposed Frederick II. In 1243, Innocent IV was elected Pope, but Frederick had managed to arouse dissent against the Pope, even in Rome, where plots against Innocent forced him to flee the city. The Basilica of the Four Crowned Saints was the stronghold of Cardinal Stefano Conti, the vicar of the Pope and of Rome in the absence of Pope Innocent IV. It was Cardinal Conti who commissioned the frescoes, which include a legend of the donation, treating it as a political manifesto of how the controversy between the Pope and the Emperor was to be regarded. When Dante visited Rome, possibly in 1300, and for sure the Jubilee year, and then for sure in 1301 as ambassador of Florence to Pope Boniface VIII, he must have seen this fresco cycle, since the Basilica was one of the churches connected especially with the liturgy of the Holy Week. In Inferno 27, as well as in Inferno 18 and 19, Dante reacts forcefully and polemically to the kind of political propaganda represented by the St Sylvester chapel frescoes, and against Boniface VIII, who had taken to the extreme consequences the idea of papal authority in secular matters. I would like to conclude with Dante's polemic address to Constantine in Canto 19 of Inferno, when the poet explicitly blames Constantine for handing over the temporal power to Pope Sylvester, starting the secular rule of the Church and distracting the Pope from his spiritual mission.